If Prop 50 goes through, it would take 193,000 votes to elect a Democrat, 1.52 million votes to elect a Republican. A Democrat vote in California would be worth 8 times a Republican vote. It's really important. We do everything we can to beat this. Hey everyone, welcome to the Steve Hilton Show. We've got a real treat for you today. Someone who, if you listen to Steve Bannon's War Room, you'll know him very well. Dave Walsh. He's a really amazing expert on energy, particularly electricity, and he's got such great information on this topic that is so important about how the insane climate elitism, particularly here in California, is just causing such misery for no good reason as electricity bills rack up. But he's got incredible facts for us today. So stay tuned for that. Jenn Horn is here, and we got have some fun with the latest pronouncements on the 2028 presidential race from Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, and a really good conversation with someone called Will Hild. He runs a fantastic organization holding big business accountable for their political woke activities. And there's some amazing information about one of our biggest insurance companies and their relationship with China. So that's all coming up. But I want to start today with a very simple message, because we're getting into the final stages of election season this year. Of course, you've got elections going on across the country. Not many. It's not a midterm election where we've got all the House seats up and lots of governor races, as we'll see next year when I'll be on the ballot in November for governor here in California, if all goes according to plan. It's not a big massive midterm like we're going to see next year, but there's some really big races that are going to tell us a lot about what's going on. The New Jersey governor's race, the Virginia governor's race, I'm paying close attention to them, in particular New Jersey. Jack Ciattarelli running there, and I've been talking to him a bit. He's a great candidate, and it's very similar in terms of the issues with what's going on in California. He's particularly focused on electric bills. Actually, we have higher electric bills here in California. That's why that Dave Walsh conversation that's coming up is going to be really, really interesting. But Jack is fighting exactly the same kind of campaign that I've been fighting here. Positive, practical things to make life better for the people who've been hurt by these far left ideological policies. And I think he's got a really great shot. And it's going to be a great shot in the arm for all of us in California if he manages to flip that blue state and get himself elected governor of New Jersey and start putting New Jersey back on track. And I, of course, will be planning to follow in his footsteps if that does happen here in California next year. But the big one for us in California this year is, of course, Prop 50. And we've talked about it many, many times over the weeks. So you know what's going on here. It is a totally outrageous power grab by Gavin Newsom about his own. There's only one reason this is happening. There really is only one reason. That is Gavin Newsom's presidential ambitions. He wants to be the guy that sticks it to Trump by giving another 5 House seats to the Democrats so they can impeach Trump. This is the plan. He said it all along. It's about, this is a quote from Gavin Newsom, it's our chance to, quote, end the Trump presidency. That's what he said right at the beginning of all this. So they dress it up in all of this. Oh, it's responding to Texas about defending democracy. That is total BS. It's not about any of that. It is completely outrageous. It is so egregiously unfair. We're going to be putting out more and more information in the days ahead, including something you'll see me posting, which is, and again, you may have heard me say this before, if this goes through, if Prop 50 goes through, and another 5 House seats from California not flip, that's the wrong word. They're not flipping it. They're stealing them from Republicans. So you'll have just 6% of the House seats in California for Republicans, even though we get 40% or more of the vote. Here's what that means in terms of the number of votes that it would need to elect a Republican to Congress compared to a Democrat. If Prop 50 goes through, it would take 193,000 votes to elect a Democrat to Congress from California, 1.52 million votes to elect a Republican. A Democrat vote in California would be worth 8 times a Republican vote. I mean, it's just so obviously, outrageously unfair. It's just unbelievable that they're trying to get away with this. But of course, they are shameless. This is the arrogance you get from 15 years now of one party rule in California. And the people who've given us the worst outcomes of any state in the country on absolutely everything, the highest poverty rate, the highest unemployment rate, the highest taxes, highest costs, as we mentioned, for electricity, but also gas and water and insurance, the worst business climate, crime, homelessness, everything, a total disaster. And now they want more power to do even more damage. It's just unacceptable. But however strong our arguments, and of course, there's the legal argument as well. That's what I've been trying to do. I wanted to stop this in the first place, this election that nobody asked for, nobody wants. It's basically a corrupt contribution to Gavin Newsom's presidential campaign. I've been trying to stop it in the federal court because we've got a very strong argument, legal argument under the Equal Protection Clause, the 14th Amendment of the US Constitution, as well as the Equal Protection Clause in the California Constitution. We have a Biden judge now clearly, nakedly interfering in that, constantly delaying our case. So it's too late now to stop it. That was my plan, to try and stop it. Well, she paid to that. We're not giving up, though. That case is still going on. Amazingly, the hearing was set for, well, it's maybe not amazing, outrageously, the hearing was set for November the 6th, 2 days after the election. So that's still going on. But in the meantime, we've got to try and defeat this. And I do detect a certain sense of defeatism on the Republican side. Massively outspent. You've got the Democrat industrial complex, the corrupt machine, the government unions, Soros plowing money in, all this happening. So the Republican side has been vastly outspent. And you've got yes on 50 ads everywhere, and you're just not seeing that from the other side. And I get a sense, you've got this information being put out there about the returns and what proportion of Democrats have sent their ballots in and so on, much higher than Republicans. So we've still got plenty of time to turn that around. Okay, we cannot be defeatist. It's really important. We do everything we can to beat this. And there's a simple way of putting it, which is if you voted for President Trump or Republican candidates last year, and everyone who does that votes no on 50 this year, will beat it. It's very simple. If everyone who voted Republican in 2024 votes no on 50 in 2025, we will beat Proposition 50 and tell Gavin, as I've been putting it, to prop off. That's what we need to do. So please, number one, if you haven't voted yet, make sure you do. Everyone's been sent a ballot, but you can show up in person as well. Just make sure that you vote. Don't leave it till the last minute because something may come up. So number one, make sure you vote. Number two, everyone in your network, your friends, your family, post it on Facebook, take a picture of yourself voting. Just make sure you encourage people to get out there and vote no on 50. There is still plenty of time to beat this. And the beautiful thing about beating this is that it will be a massive blow to Gavin Newsom's presidential ambitions. It will be a humiliation for Gavin Newsom. So if that's your only motivation, just use that. Wipe the smirk of Gavin Newsom's face. Vote no on 50. Jenn Horn is with us. I think so. I saw you, of course, on the radio show every Friday. We join you on AM 870, The Morning Answer. Wait, you were off this Friday.
I was. I took
So
this
I had
elusive thing called a
Grant.
vacation. It's
Well,
weird.
I
I
don't know about
haven't
that.
done one of those in a long time, but I was actually supposed to go to Hawaii, but my trip actually got canceled. But since I already have the time off, I thought, you know what, I'm doing a staycation.
I love
So
that.
I have been home, but on vacation for the last week. So I am now catching up with you, which is a lot of
Wonderful.
fun because we saw each other at a big event that I
Yes,
hosted
that was
last week.
great.
Yeah.
That was really good. It's always such great energy at that event. It's a really big event. If you don't know about it and you don't go, when is it once a year? I sort of feel like you do events
We do 2 events every
Yeah,
year, and one of
that's
them
right.
is called the Unite IE Conservative Summit.
That's right.
And so we do that usually in the springtime. And then towards the fall, we do our town hall event, which is actually our biggest event of the year. And this year we had new station management that said, you know, we like to make it more like our Unite IE Conservative Summit. which is almost like a turning point. Just to put it in perspective for people that don't know, we have lots of people that come through and speak. And this year was a huge event. You were there, Scott Jennings, Larry Elder, Sheriff Mark Lamb, who just announced his run for Congress. I mean, it was a lot of fun to have everybody in one place at the same time. You're right, the energy is incredible.
Really good energy. It was
Yeah.
fantastic. So tell us, what do you got for us today, Jen?
All right. So I do think we need to pay homage to Katie Porter. Did you see her husband came out?
Yeah, everyone's been sending that to me. I haven't read it yet, so
He didn't say, I mean, he didn't like go scorched earth about his scorched head after the mashed potatoes, but he did say that what everybody is saying is true, and that is that
this isn't
she,
the New York Post, right? You did an
yes,
interview or something. Yeah.
basically saying she's a disaster and that she's mean to her staff. Everything that I think everybody knew, that she's just not a nice person. So confirmed by the ex-husband. I don't know if that's grounds for any other, further monetary compensation in his settlement, but he came out and confirmed this. And of course, that has impacted the polling. And Steve, I have to give you a little prop here, because not only did Katie Porter fall in the polls, but it seems like you picked up steam and you are sitting at the top of the leaderboard right now. So
The top, it's
congratulations to
amazing.
you.
Number one, it's very good.
Yeah.
Um, I'll take it. Like we were just discussing, I'm the opposite of complacent. I assume the next one will be terrible, and we got to keep fighting. And there's no relaxing here, because it's a massively important fight. But it's encouraging. I really, do feel encouraged. I feel encouraged that we're getting a good response, and it just encourages me to keep going further and faster and fight harder.
Yeah, here's what encourages me. And not only do I see you at the top, I see the other Republican in the race as well, towards the top of the list. I think people are ready for a change in California. And so this is what encourages me more than any poll, is that I'm seeing the trends, the momentum, people tired of the suffering that Democrats have caused us in California for 20 years. And I think they're ready for a change. I've been out there with Carl DeMaio quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. The assembly
Yeah,
was in
me
San
too.
Diego.
Yeah.
And watching the crowds of people that come together, for instance, yesterday, when you and I are taping today on a Monday, but on Sunday in Pasadena, he had 300 people come out, 300 or 400 people in LA County on a Sunday afternoon. And they're coming because they're worried about Prop 50. They want to get voter ID on the ballot. And so this is the kind of stuff that we have to hold on to. And I think the biggest message is it's not about Democrat or Republican anymore in California. If that's the case, we lose every time. It's about sane versus insane. And I was so encouraged looking around that room yesterday when I was out with Carl. It's a diverse crowd. You've got young people, old people, all different colors, all different backgrounds, all different sexes and races, and everybody is just tired of the same old thing in California. And I think this is the moment to strike while the iron is hot.
Yeah, I love that. I think you put it so well. And the other conversation, one of the other conversations in this episode of the show on energy policy is just such a great example. And I want to tie that together with a word that you used that I think is so important for people to understand. We've got the highest electricity costs in the whole country, um, apart from Hawaii in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Um, and it's really hurting people. And it's insane because it's not achieving any of the goals that they set for it, the climate elitists who push this stuff. All it's doing is hurting people. And you use that word suffering. I think that's a really, really appropriate word. People are suffering, have been for years. I met someone just the other day who works full time in, not some, like a lot high above minimum wage. Like I mean, not wealthy, but just a regular person, exactly the kind of person that I have in the front of I say all the time, I'm fighting for working people and working families in California, just regular working people, not super, of course, not rich, but not desperately poor, just regular. He told me he lives in Redwood City here in the Bay Area. He can't afford to heat his apartment.
Wow.
Like, and you have Gavin running around saying we're fourth biggest economy in the world, and you've got people who are just working, not like destitute, who
Yeah.
can't afford to, and not some, sometimes where you think about that issue of, and it's a terrible thing, and I can't afford to. You think of maybe, a senior, you're living in a fixed income, and that's or tragedy. No, there's a working person.
Yeah. This is the
and
thing.
I just have to sit in the cold.
And they make choices. I mean, how many times I know I've talked to parents who are making choices. Well, I can either send my kid to a private school or I can buy groceries this week. Or I mean, these difference makers for people. And the term suffering, I think, is real because we pay a lot to live here. We are not like scrimping by. I mean, we are using we're working, we're making a good living in California, but people are still making these hard choices. And, I think we talked a few weeks ago when I was here last with you, Steve, about how even the government in LA County is now saying, well, we're going to give free rent to illegal
Yes, yes.
what about the people who have jobs, who are
No,
going
it's
out and
disgusting.
working every day? It's a slap in the face, and I think enough is enough for a lot of people. And
Yeah.
again, I don't think it's Democrat, Republican anymore. Sane versus insane.
Yes. And in fact, at your event, just before it, I taped a conversation with a Latina from East LA,
Yeah.
and she was saying exactly that. And I'm using the word when in response to you just now, I said it's disgusting. That was her word. I said, "How do you feel? Your family of illegal immigrants. How do you feel about what they're doing now? Disgusting." That's what she said. It's disgusting. We didn't get that. We worked incredibly hard. We went through the right process. My dad came here, became a citizen, and we're citizens, and we're proud to be Americans. Did it the right way from Mexico, and we didn't get handout. We didn't get any of this stuff. And now you're just giving free rent when we can barely afford to pay our own rent, and we're working for them. It's beyond, it's disgusting. That is the word.
And a lot of people are probably experiencing what I'm experiencing right now, which is I just got that beautiful envelope in the mail with my property taxes in it. And you look around and you go, what am I getting for all this money? And I really think that there'd be a revolution if we all had to send a check each and every paycheck that we receive to the government for the amount of taxes that just magically disappear. We are not getting served by the amount of money that we pay out to this government. And it's pathetic. And what do? We just, we watch Gavin Newsom send inauthentic, nasty tweets that someone in his PR department decides are appropriate. We don't have anybody leading us. And I think people are ready for a leader.
It's making me more and more. Let's just switch to that now, Newsom. I mean, I'm torn the whole time because on the one hand, it's so ridiculous, and he seems so fake,
Yeah.
and he's just got on this track now of this insane, like like he's so. I mean, it's laughable in a way. Like my colleagues are like, "Why is it so dramatic?" Like it's all just, like the lazy, like he said, Trump's bringing terror to the streets of and it's all so dialed up to like 11 the whole time. And of course, it's ridiculous in his own state. And this is the thing of that we've had this conversation the last couple of days about, or the last week about Trump and sending federal resources to San Francisco. And I went to see the protests. I went down there to Alameda to where they're all protesting, in the usual crowd, Palestinian flags, FI spray painted on everything. And I just think to myself, this is just right by Oakland. And this city's been it's basically a war zone for, I don't know, at least probably about 10 years. Carjackings, like dangerous violent crime, massive murder, sh businesses just can't operate there, in and out, shut all these Denny's, one after another, we're getting out of there because it's a lawless hellhole.
Yeah.
And you drive around Oakland and it's just, again, I mean, I'm sorry, it's disgusting. Like the trash everywhere, it's disgusting. The smell, this has been going on for all these. Did these people ever protest about that?
No.
About about the deaths on their streets, about fentanyl dealers, Honduran organized criminal gangs roaming around? No, not a peep from these people about that. But then Trump says, "I'm gonna come and clean it up." Oh, no,
I know.
we're out on the streets, can't have that. It's
How dare
insane.
you?
Exactly. How
We
dare
like
you
squalor.
try and stop people dying on the streets from fentanyl? Oh, my goodness.
It's sort of the same argument, not that this has anything to do with California, but it's the same argument that these Democrats have when it comes to the ballroom being added onto the White House. Do you not like dancing? Do you not like I mean, do you not like clean streets? Why the opposition? And it's almost silly. And listening to Gavin Newsom talk, this week he's finally like showed his cards because, of course, before he was never interested in running for president. Now he's saying, well, maybe after the midterms, I might jump in, which is no surprise to any of us who have been watching him. But this is going to become the country's problem. California's problem is now going to be the country's problem. And what I think is really concerning about Gavin Newsom is that the people who are supporting him right now are pretty inauthentic. And if you listen to the media, and I was doing this weekend, I was listening, don't judge me. I was listening to MSNBC this weekend, and they were talking about Gavin Newsom like he was the savior.
Wow.
I'm going to tell you right now that just about 6 months ago, they were screaming about the fact that he had Charlie Kirk and on his podcast, that he was having these interviews with people who were not in agreement with Democrats and with Democrat policies. Twofold, you've got a media who will prop anybody up if they think there's a chance to defeat them. They want to get involved in this race. That's what their job is. They're going to be the PR branch of the Democrat Party. But what's really disturbing to me about Gavin Newsom is no one knows who he is. The only thing we know is that he is a shapeshifter. Steve, I can, and I have before, recited the things that you stand for when you were running for governor. I can recite your policies. I can tell people who you are as a candidate. I can't do that for Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom comes out and talks to Charlie Kirk and says we shouldn't vilify Republicans. And now that's all he's doing. 6 months down the road, he's vilifying every Republican that he can find. He doesn't even have the authenticity to actually do his own tweets. He's got his own PR person who's doing these Trump style tweets, which are so popular with Democrats. Who is he really? He will do anything to get to his next job. And that's what has run California into the ground. And it's troubling because the mainstream news media will jump behind him and push him along because they think he might be the greatest way to get rid of JD Vance or whoever's next for president. And it's scary because we've seen what's happened here in our state.
So it's so interesting. I don't know what's going on with him. It feels increasingly pathological. Like just that you think, wait, do you not realize how you're coming across, and that we can go and check things? And so I just this week there was a little moment in that interview that you're talking about where he finally said on the record, yeah, I'm interested in running for president. By the way, one of my favorite piece of commentary on that was, so Emily Hoven, who's an opinion writer at the San Francisco Chronicle, writes great stuff. She's fantastic. She reposted the clip of and the post was from whatever he did, this at CBS this morning or something, and so Gavin Newsom confirms he might run for president, whatever, and then she just reposted it and she just put, "Oh honey, we knew." It's like it's like
No surprise
this is
here, no
not a surprise.
revelation.
Exactly. But the thing that I just noticed in that little exchange that he had with whoever it was he asked him about it, and he said something like, "Yeah, um, to deny it would be a lie, and you can't do that."
No, please.
As if he doesn't literally lie all the time. And again, they're so provable, they're so pathetically provable lies, like the one about Latinx. I never said that. Then within an hour, you've got someone compiling all the clips of him saying
Of
it.
course.
Just ridiculous lies. The one just now, this weekend, about how, growing up in poverty and, Wonder Bread or whatever he was talking about. Within an hour, I saw, we're just someone found the headline and a photo from a story in the San Francisco Chronicle from like decades ago. Teenagers, him with the two Gettys, and one of and Gavin Newsom was there, and the headline of the piece was "Kids of the Rich in San Francisco," and he's growing up one. I mean, but do you think he knows that he's lying, or is it he's detached from reality? Doesn't Is it cynical or just something? I'm finding it really hard to explain, actually.
I think you're right when you say it's pathological because clearly the stuff that he's spewing can be proven. I mean, this is what you can't lie in the age of TikTok and social media. People
Yeah,
are
but
going
and
to
he just
find
said
you.
that, and the person who's constantly lying
Yeah.
just said on camera, "And of course you can't lie." What?
That's
Like,
exactly what you're doing. But see, this is also from their playbook, is that they will call things out on the other side that they are actually doing. And I was trying to, because I like to think I'm intellectually honest. I mean, most of the time. And I think even in moments, I will call out my own hypocrisy. I think we all should, because sometimes it's okay on our side of the aisle, but it's not okay on their side of the aisle. But I was doing this little exercise this weekend, and I thought to myself, why is it okay? Gavin Newsom is trying to copy Donald Trump's tweeting style. He's trying to become Trump. I mean, he's cussing. He's using the all caps. He's obviously, Trump lives rent free in the mind of Gavin Newsom in that hair gel. And so I thought to myself, why is it okay for me when Trump does it? And I actually enjoy it and like it. And why is it not okay when Gavin Newsom does it and it feels icky and disgusting? And I think what I came up with is that when you know who Trump is
Yeah, that's right.
and even if he has people help him with his tweets are true to who he is and things that he says. Gavin Newsom, we don't know who he is. He has shapeshifted all throughout the time that he's been governor of California. We saw major moves and shifting just in the last 6 months alone. He is just desperate to get to his next job. He's desperate to be president of the United States. And I think that's the difference, is that there is no authenticity when it comes to Gavin Newsom. And I actually feel that the country will see it. Maybe in California, we're not good at smelling out authenticity. We are, again, the Hollywood state, but people in Oklahoma know authentic, and it's not Gavin Newsom.
I think that's a really good summary. And that's exactly how I feel. Just before we wrap it up, I wanted to note that Gavin may have a competitor from California in the presidential race, because there was another person out this weekend saying that she has not given up. Kamala Harris, what about that? She's in England. She's in an interview with the BBC. And there's such a gift, she's so bad at this. When she says, I'm not done. And like, as I posted, like, and I said on Fox, yes, I said, like, we can hear America saying, yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
Put a fork in you, girl. We're done. you know, she's another one. I mean, all I will tell you is that she and Gavin Newsom secretly hate each other. They have like this frenemy relationship. I will pop my popcorn, Steve. We will have a viewing party when they have to debate each other on stage, because they know where the other has buried their bodies. They've grown up in this business together. And I'd love to see Kamala and Gavin Newsom. The word salad squaring off would be amazing.
Amazing. I agree with that. The other thing that just really made me laugh, although actually more than, no, it wasn't just like the I'm done thing. No, I'm not done thing made me laugh, but the this bit actually made my skin crawl because it was so gross and again sort of sanctimonious and pompous and self-regarding, where she goes, I've lived a life of service.
Oh,
All my life I've been service, 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 service. And it's that same sort of Meghan Markle kind of service, and you just think, I'm not going to curse, but like, just, what I'm thinking, like, please. It's not about service. It's about your own vanity. And every job you've done, you've been a disaster, and you just done no real jobs. You've been in the government all your life, your career politician. Service. Honestly, it really annoys me.
yeah, she's got a problem. And that makes me want to throw up a little bit when I hear you say that, because I heard the same thing. And here's the thing with Kamala Harris, and you know this, and people who have watched her in California know this. She sold out everybody that she could, again, to get the job. She and Gavin Newsom are two peas in a pod. They struggle with authenticity. She was the one who was going to lock people up when it was convenient for her. Then she was the one who thought, no, we need to let everybody out of jail when that was convenient for her. The fact that she sold out women and children is particularly insulting to me about Kamala Harris, because she pretends that she is out there fighting for women and children. And what did she do? She allowed a man who went after women, in the former mayor of San Diego, to walk and
Yes,
skate
Fellner, right? Yeah.
because they shared a political consultant. So she did him a favor. The kids who were abused in the Catholic Church scandal, those kids were screwed because Kamala Harris did not want to upset the Archdiocese of San Francisco. This is someone who knows where her bread is buttered. She is never going to do the right thing. She's going to do what's right for her and not right for the rest of us.
Oh no, but it's service, Jen.
It
It's
is
all about
service.
her
I know.
service.
She has served us. I apologize, Kamala. Yes. No more. If this is your service, I would like to move on. Thank you.
Exactly. Brilliant. Thank you, Jen. Great to see you as always.
Thank you,
See
Steve.
you next time. Thank you. Okay, as promised, joining us now, Dave Walsh, energy expert, electricity expert, former president and CEO of Mitsubishi Power Systems, frequent guest. You may have heard him on Steve Bannon's War Room. So, Dave, my argument is that here in California, we're the test case for the total disaster of what I call the Democrats' climate elitism, because it's regular working people who pay the price for their kind of ideological vanity, this obsession with unreliable sources of power that are more expensive, wind, solar. You know this better than anyone. And so my kind of simple way of describing what I would like to do as governor for here in California, here's the list. Number one, kill windmills. Number two, end solar subsidies. Number three, unleash natural gas as the primary source of power generation for now, and then use that as a bridge to get to nuclear, but that'll take a longer time to come in. So that's my basic plan: kill windmills, end solar subsidies, natural gas, bridge to nuclear. Tell me what you think of all of that.
That'd be a very effective plan, Steve, for California. California, has the highest, second highest electricity rates in the country.
Yes, Hawaii is the only one.
32.6 cents. Well, that's because of the remote distance and
yes,
isolation of it. But I mean, it's appalling, and it's largely because the state a long time ago abolished new nuclear power at Songs and at Diablo Canyon. So we spent 40 years with them fighting that. Then suddenly, Newsom flips on something as critical as energy erratically to wanting to keep Diablo open for 10 more years. But the fact is that plant could have been 8 units. Songs could have been 8 units. Now we're down to Diablo. No new coal in California, of course, for 20 years. The coal plant shut down with one left, one remaining, about 400 megawatts. And gas plants haven't been built in any large quantity. So what you've got, California imports on average 25 to 32% of its electricity from neighbors. Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, and you'll find out Utah. As governor, you won't be able to have any control over those costs through your Public Service Commission, because power made in neighboring states that you're beggaring from, you don't control through your PSC. They charge whatever they negotiate with PG&E and Southern Cal Edison, whatever they negotiate. The Utility Commission has no authority over that, over power coming in from other states, what that costs. And California is a massive importer because of the efforts to use solar and wind power that run only, in California, solar is about a 25% capacity factor thing, meaning it's non-operational 75% of the time. Wind is operational in small scale from 19% up to 27% of the time. Therefore, the vast majority of the time, it's non-operational. Therefore, with this stuff, if you will, renewables, you need two whole systems. You need the nighttime system, and then you need the duck curve system for midday to support the sunshine period. But you need two systems. You need the nighttime for it, which would be natural gas, nuclear, hopefully some coal, but probably not likely. But this exactly what you described is completely necessary. And this playbook has been run on a cost basis in Western Europe, 9 Western European countries, Australia, New Zealand, parts of the U.S., in every single market where this has been endeavored, a 25% or more intervention of renewables into a power system, you've got hideously high electricity rates. Europe average about 3.5 times here. The UK and Germany leading the way on that. Horrendous cost levels, devastating their economies. In the other, Spain, the same thing, and also share the characteristic of all massive importers of necessary power from Russia, Spain from France, who has abundant nuclear power. So you've got this importing necessity because of the very, very part-time nature of renewables that these folks experiment with. So you've got 13 countries in the world and California, a few other states here. Well, actually quite a few states now experimenting with this, where the facts are in on the cost levels. You wind up at 30 to 50 cents a kilowatt hour, which is 2.3 times higher than the U.S. average without California.
So let me just thank you. I mean, this is why I've been so looking forward to this conversation, because you know this stuff so well. Let me put to you the happy talk propaganda that we get here in California from Gavin Newsom and all the others, and have you respond to that. So what we get is every now and again, during the year, you get this blast of propaganda saying today California was 100% powered by renewable power, and they say solar power is now cheaper than fossil fuels, cheaper than natural gas, cheaper than anything else. It's the way to go. The costs are down. Solar is the future because it's cheaper. Hit those 2 points.
It's not cheaper at all. Solar power to build is about $5,550 a kilowatt hour. Capital cost, combined cycle has gone way up because of the boom going on to buy gas turbines nationally is about $2,500 a kilowatt hour. So the capital cost of solar is over 2.2 times higher. Battery storage is about 7 times higher than conventional combined cycle gas power. And you need a lot of battery storage if you're going to use solar. So no, that the cost issue is insane. What they're quoting is the retail price or the wholesale price as it comes in from Nevada and Arizona in the noon to 3 o'clock period when the sun is at peak, and you've got this flood of excessive solar power. It's priced very cheaply, sure, because in that narrow window of the day, there's too much of it. But the fact of the matter is, before 9 a.m. and after 4:15 p.m., it's completely useless for power generation. You have none of it. So the big limiting factor is the huge time of the day, the 18 hours a day in California too, where it's unavailable for power generation. And then you got parts of the year with cloud cover, not like here, quite a bit more, but where that drives the same issue even during the middle of the day. It's unavailability. So when you take its true cost, the cost of making that energy, because the capital cost is so high, if you price it fairly, it's about 2.5 times more costly than conventional gas-fired power. But in the few moments of the day when it floods the market and you've got too much of it, sure, it's priced cheaply in the RTO market.
And then what about the subsidies for solar and all of that? I mean, all the Biden federal stuff, there's California stuff. I mean, that must play a part in creating the illusion that it's cheaper.
Well, yeah. I mean, the reality of it, over here, it's the same thing. You've got $5,550 a kilowatt hour. That's massively expensive compared to natural gas. Again, 2.5 times more. So when and that's subsidized. Without subsidies, it's about $7,000 a kilowatt hour to install. So you've got a massive cost that's subsidized down to a still 2.2 higher cost than the conventional option. The subsidies only make it a little bit cheaper than the massive cost, 30% less than a 4 times higher than conventional cost, becomes about 2.5 times higher with the subsidies. So the subsidies don't make it cheaper than natural gas. They make it cheaper than they are otherwise without the subsidies. That's the tricky thing with the subsidies. And the shame of it, unfortunately, the way the BBB was gerrymandered, this is going to go on another year and a half. Subsidized solar farms and wind farms will go on for the next year and a half. And those started in the next year with 5% or more invested in them are going to be subsidized for quite a long time, even under the big, beautiful bill. So we've got a lot of this going on nationally, actually in red and blue states alike. Very sad.
The other thing you hear is batteries now, but the whole battery thing, right? It's getting better. They're more useful. They're going to get more efficient eventually. I mean, Elon Musk goes on about this. Of course, he's got an interest because he's a provider of them. The Tesla battery packs, these they look like shipping containers, these industrial battery farms. And the Financial Times just did this whole thing about batteries of the future, and California's leading the way. Again, what's behind that kind of propaganda?
Well, specifically his interest in that is that Tesla, in addition to EVs, is one of the largest distributors of Chinese utility scale lithium ion batteries for utility power storage. Tesla. So he's way in the business of it. His interest in it is not the technology of it. The cost of battery storage is about 6 times more than building a conventional combined cycle plant. 6 times more. And the utilization of the batteries has grown a little bit from 2 now to 3 hours a day. So you've got effective 12.5% of the time available energy coming from batteries before they're discharged. And then it takes about 21 hours to recharge them. So now you've got about a 3 hour a day device. And the cost basis is horrendous. The land use issue is horrendous. And then the environmental issue, once they're spent, is a huge issue. What do you do with them? But no, there's no substitute. Countries and states who have tried to depend on this, and Europe, Western Europe is a case study. Australia, New Zealand, case studies in attempting this. The cost of electricity winds up growing by a factor of 3 to 4 times very quickly when you experiment with these massively costly resources that are intermittent. Batteries aren't intermittent, but they're very, very part-time, 3 hours a day.
It's so and it's all just totally ideal. To me, I often say that of all the insane ideologically driven policies we have to put up with in California, the energy policy is the most insane because we're going through all this cost and pain. People can't afford their electric bills, like really suffering, human suffering, and it's working people, the poorest in California, who are paying the price. For what? It doesn't even help. What's it done for anything that they claim in terms of, reducing global temperatures or anything? It's just ridiculous.
The EPA just eliminated the endangerment finding of the first term of the Obama administration. The EPA deemed that CO2 was actually a harmful pollutant. Now, CO2 is not an emitted thing. Emissions is an adjective to do with poison gas and stuff. CO2 is not emitted. It's naturally occurring to the extent of 95% of it. But 72% of it comes from evaporating water, lakes and oceans evaporating. Another high percentage from the rotting of refuse and animals, the rotting of carcasses, the rotting of plant life, another 20-some% of it. Geologic activity, another 5 or 6%. Human-caused CO2 is all of 5% of the content of it in the upper atmosphere, the human-caused portion. It's completely necessary for plant life to grow and to have crops growing in the process known as photosynthesis. So no, the whole basis behind this, but you have a worse problem to wrestle with in California, and that is the government's continuous harassment and attempt to shut down the utilities. We've had Pacific Gas and Electric has been bankrupted 2 times now by the state. Southern Cal Edison, another strident effort to bankrupt them by the state. And now we've got, Southern Cal Edison finally came to terms on a $3.6 billion worth of payments for the fires back in 17 and 18. Not the recent ones, the ones in 17 and 18. They're ponying up $3.6 billion. PG&E has faced claims over 15 years of $30 billion for various fires, all laid at their feet. Whether or not they had to do with them, a big question. But the state government has been under Democrat rule in California all about shutting the utilities down. And that actually bankrupted PG&E back in 2001. The gigantic power purchase agreements necessary with Arizona and New Mexico, when the prices of the power went way up, the Public Utility Commission failed to let PG&E pass those costs along to ratepayers, and they bankrupted the company at that time. Took them into Chapter 11. So when you're chronically putting your state utilities in Chapter 11, you're driving up the cost of electrification for another reason, and that is they won't build new capacity in the state, so you've got to import more power. And it's just a mess. There has to be some harmonious working with those who the state regulates.
Right.
Yeah, you regulate, but you don't try to shut them down.
So when you said, just to be really precise about that, when you say shut, it's not that they want to shut them down until them stop operating. It's just that they're shifting the blame for what mega wildfires from them, because it's their environmental. I mean, I've detailed this. It's their environmental policies, the extreme environmentalism. They don't manage the forests, which is the naturally occurring wildfires get so much worse, etc. Plus, the other argument here is things that sensible precautions that could help prevent ignitions, like clearing, loop branches from power lines or undergrounding power lines or all of that stuff. They don't have the money to do that because they're forcing them to do all this renewable crap.
No, exactly. And my words might have been a little harsh, but when I say, though, assessed $30 billion worth of claims against PG&E for a 15-year period on various fires, and then recently $3.5 billion on Southern Cal Edison. They use them as a scapegoat intentionally because they're corporate enterprises. Use them as a scapegoat to the degree of they've bankrupted PG&E twice, 2 times. That drives up their cost of borrowing. When you're a big power plant builder, transmission line builder, you got to borrow a lot of money. You got to borrow it cost effectively to do these things. Well, they can't. That just adds to the rates. Now, try to shut them down. Yeah, it's in figure of speech. Have effectively been doing that in their scapegoating the 2 major utilities is a problem.
So I just want to put another argument here, and then we'll wrap it up, which is that you hear. This is just one of the things you hear. These advocates of all this say, which is, well, China's powering ahead on solar and electrification, and they're going to be leading the world, and the US is being left in the dust because China's just eating our lunch on batteries and all of this. So tell us about that.
China's power is 61% coal-fired. It's about 10% gas-fired. It's about 12% nuclear power, and it's about 12 to 14% renewables. China today are building, as we speak, Steve, 420 coal plants, permitted and in construction. Now, they're all scrubbed and ultra supercritical. Wonderful technology invented here in the UK, Germany, and Japan. Ultra high temperature, clean coal with scrubbers on the back end, precipitators, FGD systems, very clean. That's what they're building. So when you look on an energy basis, what China is building is about 85% base load, continuous duty power plants, being coal the biggest single one, nuclear the next, gas-fired the third. Yeah, they're building out solar. The percentages seem high, but as a percentage of what they're building out in energy terms, it's about 15% of what they're building out. Their game is they're the world's largest exporter. They provide 87% of the thin film PV in the world for solar farms. So Europe, Australia, New Zealand here, we're massive buyers of their product. That's what they like about and inverters and battery storage. They met 86% of the lithium ion is processed in the world for battery storage in China. These are huge export products for them. That doesn't mean they're ahead of us. They're exporting stuff that's part-time, intermittent, and very costly. We need to figure out how to stop receiving it. That's damaging to the economy.
Yeah, and so just to quickly go back to the batteries point, I was very interested in that because when you see the Tesla, because it's a big thing in California, so they're really pushing it, and the battery farms, right? The utility battery farms, which they say, well, that's the future, solar plus battery, that's the future. Keep hearing that. The Tesla one, so that and you think, well, Tesla, they manufacture here in America, so those for cars, but the Tesla batteries are made in China, are they?
The lithium comes from China. The lithium
Right.
is processed in China. The batteries are racked up on racks and enclosures over here. I mean, this takes us into the third world, the U.S. becoming a third world, that we import batteries largely from China, somewhat from Korea, but the value added is 85% China, the processing of lithium and the manufacture of the batteries that he's bringing over here for battery storage. And the costs are exorbitant. They're again 6 to 8 times the cost of building a conventional power plant that would produce equivalent power.
And then I just want to say one last thing. Want to get your reaction to, because I think we covered everything, and you're so concise because you know what you're talking about. Gas-fired power stations. The other thing you're now hearing, I see in all this propaganda, is, well, you fossil fuel gas people, you know what you're talking about, because solar is now cheaper than gas power stations, and gas turbines are now there's a backlog, and it's going to, you can't do it because there's a backlog, and they're way more expensive than solar.
They're not more expensive than solar. Even at the present, 2 years ago, it cost $1,000 to build $1,000 a kilowatt to build a 1,000 megawatt gas plant. The cost has gone up like 2.5 times, but still, that's less than half the cost of building a solar farm in the average U.S. market. It's less than half the cost to build a conventional gas plant, But the beauty of that is then you've got an asset that can run 24 hours a day and on human command. You're not exposed to brownouts and blackouts with equipment that runs on human command. It's hugely different. And then the land use issue. I'll tell you, Steve, over here, it has been claimed by NextEra officials from the power company over here that the energy model for Florida is California. They've announced a plan to build here 90,000 megawatts of solar farms. This is all they're doing here in free Florida. 90,000 megawatts of solar farms means 1,200 square miles of land. The land use issue on these is horrendous. If it's desert, it's one thing. But over here, for example, in a lot of the country, it's not desert. It's highly useful land used for farming, arable land used for farming. Now transitioning over, that's the transition, the use of land
It's
to
disgusting.
populate. So it's just very disturbing.
No. I mean, I've done it.
Huge. It's huge.
I'm in the Central Valley the whole time, and it's one of the most upsetting things. The most fertile farmland in the world, the Central Valley of California, and they're literally ripped because and it's so insidious what they're doing. They're denying the farmers the water that they need, and then they say, "See, it's not usable anymore for farming, so you've got to rip it." And the only way you can make money, and the farmers are just desperate. They don't get the water, they can't grow anything. So what are they going to do? I mean, just sitting on land that they can't use, and then in swoop the solar people, and that's the only use. And so you've got this wonderful farmland, and I've made videos of it driving past, for just as far as you can see, solar farms instead of real farms growing the food that we need to feed ourselves. It's disgusting.
Just a quick one on that land use thing. To produce energy value of about 19 megawatts of solar, it takes 680 acres over here, and we're a medium good solar market. Medium good, not better than national average, not a lot better, but it takes 680 acres of land to produce about 19 megawatts of energy all day long, equivalent energy with solar. If you have a reciprocating engine for 20 megawatts, that can go on a quarter acre. You can put that on a quarter acre, and it makes power all day and all night long at human control at 1/5 the cost. This is a quarter acre compared to 680. That's a big issue over here because the land use thing is going crazy on this. And I know California's identical.
Amazing. Dave, I love it. This is amazing. I really, really love the conversation. I could go on all day actually, because it's the central issue. Energy drives everything. But for now, thank you. I'm sure we'll be talking again, but I really, really appreciate you bringing your expertise
Steve, good
today.
luck.
Thank
Good
you.
luck to you, and thanks for having me. Thank you.
Of course, thanks. If you thought that woke Inc. was over, ESG is dead, and that's all been ditched in favor of real common sense America first policies through corporate America, think again. We have a guest coming up. Will Hild is here to tell us why you need to really pay attention. He runs consumers research and joins us now. Will, great to see you. This is such a fascinating story, and one I care about a lot. I've been on this China thing for a long time, but lay it out for us. Tell us what's the story here.
Certainly. Well, we are launching a new phase of our campaign, educating consumers on the insurer named Chubb. The first phase talked about all the woke activities here they have in the United States, their DEI policies, their anti-energy policy. They refuse to insure coal plants and coal projects here in the United States, hamstringing the U.S. energy industry. But we're changing topics only slightly to talk about ChinaChub.com, which is our phase explaining the ways in which they have sold out to the Chinese Communist Party, both in word and deed. In other words, the CEO has both praised China. He's asked the United States to tone down the rhetoric when it comes to defending Taiwan. But they've also intertwined themselves economically with the Chinese and the Communist Party there, and of course the fate of the Chinese economy, which increasingly is our biggest geopolitical enemy across the globe.
That's crazy. First, lay out the economics of it first. Like, what is this connection? But some of the things you've said, that's why I thought this is such an important story. It's actually way beyond the normal thing you seem to get from corporate America, where they suck up to the Chinese regime, but to actively get involved in kind of, the Taiwan conversation and asking our government to, really seems to me to go beyond what we normally see. But first of all, lay out the basis of this. What are they even doing in China?
Yeah, I would say one of the big things is they are pushing their investments there to the tune of billions of dollars. And you have a lot of companies, obviously, that are trying to get the Chinese market, but similar, we've called them the BlackRock of insurers. And I think that's similar. You have BlackRock putting in, billions of dollars in mainland Chinese companies. Chubb is doing that as well. So they have a lot of money at stake if they were to get crossways
So
with the
they
Communist
operate
Party.
as an insurer in China.
Correct. So China, the thing that people should remember about insurers is they end up being both asset managers and insurers, because when you collect the premiums, you have to put a lot of money to work so that you have the money to pay out these premiums when they come due. And so you have sort of two ways in which you get involved in things. One is as issuer of these agreements, right? And we see them trying to use that to destroy the U.S. coal industry here by saying basically they will not insure coal. But then you end up with huge of what they call AUM, assets under management, because you take all these premiums and you collect them and you keep them and you invest them, both to turn a profit, but also so that you have the money to pay out these premiums when unfortunately tragedy strikes, what we saw in California. So you have to put that money to work somewhere, and hopefully you find a place to put it that is good for America, good for the West, good for freedom. And unfortunately, Chubb has found places to put it in mainland China that are not good for us economically, geopolitically. And so they're increasingly entwined, increasingly at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party. And like I said, with other companies who've done this, they increasingly, we've seen the NBA go through this, we've seen BlackRock go through this. It increasingly becomes a question of who owns who, right? You put billions of dollars into mainland China investments, but then they control you, because if you were to get crossways with them or don't do their bidding, maybe those monies get nationalized. Maybe you don't own anything anymore. And so it's really this trap that a lot of companies fall into. And we've seen, especially when they're lack, backbone, lack integrity, it's very easy to fall into that. And that's something that CEO Evan Greenberg, CEO of Chubb, I think has fallen prey to. Because as you noted, he's telling the United States, his home country, how to conduct foreign policy with a foreign power that's threatening a third country, Taiwan.
Let's get into that. How and when did he do that?
So in April 5th of 2023, Evan Greenberg basically told the United States to tone down the rhetoric around Taiwan, which is really incredible. You've got a U.S.-based company, a U.S.-based CEO telling the United States that they're the problem when it comes to the increasing issues with Taiwan and the aggressive actions that country, China, is taking against the free island of Taiwan. So again, this exhibits that sort of leverage that they have over him.
It's really incredible. What is the proportion of their business? I mean, do we have any information on that? Like, how dependent are they on China? Is this a little sort of, niche thing for them, or are they like all in and they see, well, our future is China?
Yeah, that's a great question. While I don't have the exact percentages, because that's not the kind of thing that they are forced to report, what's also worrying is that Wall Street increasingly runs on delta, meaning it's not just the total amount of your business that comes from a specific place or a country, it's the amount of growth that's coming from that area, because that's how these CEOs are compensated and judged, is the growth from the company. So if all your growth or a lot of your growth is coming from opening up the Chinese market, they may have more leverage than you might think, even if only like 10 or 15% of their business. But if that's 50%, 90% of the growth of a company is coming from mainland China, that's where they have you. And we've seen, again, a number of companies fall prey to that. They get in to bed with China, they hand them a lot of their IP, and then China steals it. They think, oh, we're going to have this great growth story. And it turns out that it's really the Chinese only who benefited. And the difference here, making it even worse, is that I mentioned those insurers have two ways to sort of play. One is their assets under management. One is their the policies that they write. A common theme we've seen in woke companies like Chubb is that they will hinder, using ESG and woke capitalism, they will hinder the American economy here when it comes to energy and manufacturing and utility and energy production with these woke policies. But then in China, they don't do any of that. And you don't see Chubb advocating for any of that happening in China, them removing their coal. That Chubb is happy to see that happen in China. So it really is a 1-2 punch against the U.S. economy, companies like Chubb doing this, because they don't put, they will invest more money in those types of activities in China, but then they will put the brakes on it here.
It's such a great point. I mean, we could extend it to the political realm as well. I don't suppose we've seen this guy. What's it called? Evan, what's his name?
Evan Greenberg.
Evan Greenberg. I don't imagine he's been putting out statements condemning President Xi for supporting Vladimir Putin's war machine in Ukraine, for example.
That's exactly right. That is such a great point. Is a lot of these woke CEOs will bloviate. And this was a guy, by the way, who said that American first policies were against democracy. He taught, or bad for America. He talked about having men in women's bathrooms being core to democracy, that if you banned it, that was somehow an affront to the rights of representation. And yet in China, they don't allow men in women's restrooms. That's absurd. And so it really shows a double standard that they will not push the Chinese on questions of humanitarianism, on democracy, on representation, on equal rights. But here in the United States, when people are like half the country who have conservative values, they will attack those people and even use their economics to attack their way of life.
It is really, really good story. It really exposes a lot of this stuff. So, a couple of things. First of all, what would you say to someone who says, "Yeah, okay, I get it." When you're talking about, essential things, whether that's defense, high tech stuff, pharmaceuticals that we rely on, etc. We don't want to be dependent on China. We don't want anything to do with China, whatever. Insurance, who cares? There's plenty of insurance companies. Who cares if one of them is behaving like this?
That is such a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. It's a real problem because the entire ESG grift is focused on one thing, and that is using the market share of financial services companies to push a far left progressive agenda without ever having to go to the ballot box. Because every time they take this stuff to the ballot box, they lose. So the idea is, because we couldn't get the green news scam passed, or we couldn't get companies to push our favorite social policy, what we'll do is we'll say, if you don't have our environmental policy, our preferred environmental policy, if you don't take net zero ambitions, if you're going to invest in coal and American energy, then we are not going to insure you. And there aren't as many insurers as you might think. The big players make up most of the market share when you get to the level that you would need to insure like a large coal project. It's not your average car insurer can't handle that. So there's just for example, the top 5 banks in the United States are 40% of the entire banking industry here in the United States. And they do these similar things. Companies like Bank of America, for example, are been boycotting and sanctioning American energy. But with Chubb, so it's a real problem when you've got a large insurer. And I will just say, this family has a history of hamstringing the U.S. economy. Greenberg's father was Hank Greenberg, the former CEO of AIG, right before it collapsed. He led AIG into needing the bailout, but for which we were told that the entire American economy would have collapsed because they had taken all these systemic risks on. So these companies do become quintessential linchpins, essential linchpins in our economy. And if you've got someone at the helm of them with a political agenda who says, I'm going to help the Chinese and I'm going to hinder American energy, it has a massive effect on the kind of projects and the kind of things we can do here in this country.
It's a really deep point. So it's actually these financial companies where this is most important.
That's exactly right. Increasingly, our economy has become financialized. I think that's probably something that Donald Trump and America First policies are trying to reverse. But for now, if you don't have access to finance, if you don't have access to banking, asset management, and insurance, you basically can't do business. They can cut you out of being able to be an industry. And that's not my words. That's their words. When you look at when they put out press releases on the ways in which they're not going to insure coal projects, the stated purpose is to drive that out of business, to say we're not going to have a coal industry here in the United States. So they're the ones saying that without these services, they're gonna basically put these people out of business. And that's, these people supposedly try to defend democracy, and yet do we really think that the CEO of a large insurer should be deciding whether we get to have a coal industry or not? Shouldn't that be decided at the ballot box by who we vote for president or Congress? And yet these people are supposedly defending democracy. It's kind of absurd.
So what about the argument I've heard also in the last few, not really an argument, more of an observation, I suppose, that since the election last year, we've reached peak woke, the ESG is kind of not over, but, declining. I seem to recall announcements from various big companies that they're dropping their policy, closing down the DEI department, etc. There's been this sense that, it got really bad, but now the bubble has burst. Is that right?
Yeah. I think that in terms of the peak bragging about it, doing it openly, there's truth to that. Clearly, these companies are not taking the outward positions that they once did. My concern is that when you look at the behavior of a lot of these companies, nothing under the hood has actually changed. So especially when it comes to DEI, we did a woke alert earlier this year on a number of companies, or the phenomenon of companies changing their Department of DEI to simply Department of Belonging, and changing nothing else about it, not the personnel, not the programs that they were supporting, simply the name. And so if all you're changing is simply the name of the anti-white, anti-Asian discrimination that you're conducting, that doesn't really change anything for people on the ground. And so the same thing with the net zero stuff. You've seen a lot of companies leave the cartels like Net Zero Insurers Alliance, Net Zero Banking Alliance. But in the press releases where they leave these cartels, these banking and insurance cartels, they state that this changes nothing about the way our individual company will be doing business. Another way of saying we're not going to change our internal policies. We just understand that we got caught in an antitrust scheme, and so we can't keep doing this anymore. So a lot of the same people, I've always, big believer that personnel is policy. And so if you don't see these heads of DEI departments axed, if you don't see them eliminating these departments entirely, even Boeing, who got lauded for getting rid of their DEI department, it shuffled around the staff. In the press release, they admitted they shuffled around the staff that made up these DEI departments to other parts of the company. Now, I don't believe that DEI is inherently legitimate to begin with. And it was always been an excuse, a fig leaf, to conduct anti-white and anti-Asian and occasionally anti-Jewish discrimination in promotion and hiring. Anyone who is engaged in that doesn't belong in your company in any place, because the cancer is just going to spread and metastasize. So I do think we've reached the outward view of it, the peak of having it thrown in our faces. But now we need to go through the even harder work, unfortunately, of digging through its trench warfare. Now these people have to be chiseled out. These policies have to be chiseled out.
It's interesting. It's making me think of something which, like we in the past, you have these terms thrown around, like greenwashing, right? Where in an early era where companies were pretending to be green, but they're not really. I guess now it's the opposite, problem. But and then I've even heard blue washing, when they try and do things to do with the United Nations and their logo, whatever. This feels to me like it's a kind of red, white, and blue washing. They're trying to pretend that they're all kind of behind the America First agenda. And yes, we got the memo. The country's sick of all this nonsense, but actually they're not really changing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They are simply trying to slap a new coat of paint on it. And the greenwashing thing's a very interesting story, because having the radicals out there, the Extinction Rebellion folks and the people throwing tomato soup at paintings, priceless paintings, that served a specific purpose for corporate America, because it allowed them to claim that they were somehow being centrists in pushing a political agenda. Because, see, the far left is attacking us too for not going far enough. So we have extremists on both sides. People like Larry Fink used to say that a lot, try to defend themselves. But the fact is that all the activities that they were engaging in, the DEI, the net zero pushing, were all illegitimate. So having a radical even farther out there demanding you commit, even more of a breach of your fiduciary duties or betraying your shareholders or your customers, helped them try to act like what they were doing was moderate or normal. And it wasn't. So the greenwashing is a very smart play on their part in that respect.
So let's just finish up here. I want you to talk a little bit more broadly about your work. When you talk about who's we and everything, I think I'm right. I first came across what you all did a few years ago when I was doing my Fox show. I put some of you had these great ads. I think it was Delta was one of your targets, and I played the ad and Coca-Cola, I believe. So tell us just the whole story, broader than just Chubb.
Certainly. Well, the organization I lead is called Consumers Research. It's America's oldest consumer protection organization. It was founded all the way back in 1929. And at the time, there wasn't really any product reviews out there. So this is before Yelp and Google reviews and Amazon and all that. So we were the publisher of pretty much the first product review magazine. We used to test products and say whether they actually worked or not, or they were safe or not. Obviously, the need for that has gone away. I took over the organization about 5 years ago, and the greatest threat that we saw to consumers was corporations, instead of focusing on serving their customers, were focused on serving woke politicians and woke activists. And in fact, a company going woke, like Chubb, for example, is one of the hallmarks for a company that, when we look under the hood, is not serving their customers, betraying them, is doing bad things to them. I think that airline ad we ran may have been against American Airlines. And what's funny about them is they were rated 2 years in a row as the nation's worst airline by Wall Street Journal the 2 years before that, right? But then they go woke, they push back against the election integrity legislation moving through Texas. They come out on a lot of social issues, and suddenly they're getting nice write-ups in the New York Times about how great they are. So here you have a company that's betraying its customers, doing a poor job of running an airline. It needed a $4.5 billion bailout just to stay in business. And 6 months later, the CEO is using the company to push woke politics. Those two things are connected. I get hit a lot by left-wing journalists who say, what's the big deal? Like, if the CEO wants to push left-wing politics, like, isn't that their prerogative? And the big deal is it harms consumers because it's always, every time we've ever looked into it, it's the hallmark of a company that is failing its customers, it's failing in business, and it's the refuge of charlatans. It's the refuge of people who are failing. And so that's what's happening here with Chubb. There's reports of them not making good on claims during the California wildfires. We're probably going to be doing something on that soon. But like I said, we feel that the biggest threat to consumers today is companies taking their eye off the ball and instead putting on woke politics. So we fight back against that in the form of brand tarnishment campaigns. We run consumer education campaigns to help people understand why they might want to avoid this or that company. And then we help educate elected officials on the things that they can do to push back. Because a lot of times, like with BlackRock, for example, they're using public assets to push these agendas, state, local, and federal pension money that's managed by these big
Great
asset
point.
managers, or premiums that are paid by the state, like with Chubb, are being used then to undermine people's way of life and their values. So we help educate elected officials on how to push back on that.
So just in terms of the story of the organization, was there a point where you said, right, the consumer research, the actual product review stuff and service review, not really going to be sustainable in the future, so we're going to switch to this activist role? Was that a clear sort of point of decision? When was that, and how did that?
Yeah, it was a slow process. So the magazine kind of changed its focus in the 80s towards more about policy and things that were happening in Washington, D.C. that might affect the price and quality of goods for consumers. And we were publishing that regularly up until I took over the organization. And then even that didn't seem to be really getting at the issues that were affecting everyday consumers. When you looked at the ways in which consumers were being harmed, it was mostly by corporate America's engagement in left-wing politics. And so it was probably around 2020, basically, that we shifted to this more aggressive focus of educating consumers, but also amplifying their voice in the marketplace, so that there's somebody that is really striking back against these corporations who feel it's their duty not to serve consumers, but to talk down to them and basically try to destroy their way of life in some cases. I mean, if you work in the coal industry, you've got a huge swath of the financial services industry that's basically trying to put you out of business, trying to destroy your way of life. We don't think that's how any corporation serves its consumers. And so, again, about 2020, to answer your question, we sort of shifted.
Fantastic. I love it. It's so it's great. It's like the real power of the marketplace, and you're having a really big impact. I mean, as I say, I've noticed your campaigns. So just close it out by telling us where people can, what do they need to do on Chubb, and what generally would you want them to know about the organization, how they can help and be involved?
Absolutely. So generally speaking, they can join us at consumersresearch.org. And on that website, they can sign up for something called Woke Alerts. It's a once every week, once every 2 weeks text message subscription where we send you sort of the worst of the woke of the last couple weeks. But we also provide contact information, because I think sometimes there's a tendency in media to just get you riled up about things, angry about things, but not give you any outlet to do anything about it. So we always provide email and phone number for where you can use not just your wallet, stop using their services, but also your voice to push back, because that's what the left does. The left threatens to use their wallet, but they also don't shut up, and we shouldn't either. So consumersresearch.org. People can follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, which I still like to use, at Will Hild, at WILLHILD. A lot of our work gets published there, so I highly recommend people follow me there. And then lastly, in terms of Chubb, for one thing, people should review if they are using Chubb as their personal insurer and consider changing if that's the case. So they have sort of, states where they're very active, states where they're not very active. So this may be kind of a geographically based thing. But if you are using Chubb as your insurer for housing or for really anything, you should really, really consider whether you want your premiums being used to destroy America and help pump up the Chinese. But I'll also say that it's always helpful when you tell your elected officials that you want something done about it, because a lot of these insurers are also vendors. A lot of their money comes from being vendors for large state governments. And we have a lot of governments here in the United States, state governments, who've already passed laws that basically say if you're going to boycott industries like coal, we're not going to do business with you as a customer. And so alerting your state elected officials to this and letting them know they would like that enforced against Chubb would be a great idea.
Well, this is very interesting. When I'm governor of California, as I plan to be, sounds like we need to have a very serious conversation about all the ways in which California pension money and all the rest of it is being put to anti-American use. So that's to be continued, this conversation. Will, great to see you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. It's been great.
That's our show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Have you voted on Prop 50? I'm going to remind you again, get out and vote. Tell everyone to vote. And in the meantime, make sure you follow us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, and join us again next week for The Steve Hilton Show.